My name is Lydia, and if I could go back to when I was 9, I'd tell that little girl 2 things. 1, you're not crazy. 2, you're not the mistake they said you were. But back then, I didn't know either of those things. All I knew was that dinner always looked different on my plate than on anyone else's. My sister, Cassidy, the so-called miracle child, had mashed potatoes with butter shaped like flowers, steak that melted off the bone, and fresh peach slices in a glass bowl chilled with ice. I got dry toast and boiled cabbage. When I asked why, my mom said, "Because Cassidy needs the energy. You're just you." I wanted to believe that maybe they didn't mean it, that maybe I was just imagining things. But then came the night everything broke literally. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I was 13. I'd just come back from the school library where I stayed late because I couldn't stand being home. The air always felt heavy there, like I was walking on a floor that might collapse any second. I stepped inside and smelled it immediately steak. My stomach growled so loud I almost laughed. Cassidy was already at the table. A full spread in front of her medium-rare filet, garlic asparagus, cornbread muffins. I walked into the kitchen and saw my plate already waiting. 1 piece of bread, not even toasted. A smear of mayo on it. That was it. "Where's the rest?" I asked, too tired to pretend anymore. Dad was standing near the sink. He didn't like being questioned ever. He turned. "You asking that with your tone?" I blinked. "It's not fair. Why does Cassidy get steak and I get this?" Cassidy giggled. "Maybe because I don't look like a drowned rat." My mom didn't flinch. "But Dad?" He stormed forward like he'd been waiting for that moment. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He grabbed my hand, slammed it onto the countertop. And with the other hand, he picked up the rusted hammer from the junk drawer. Cassidy kept chewing. My mom didn't move. Then, crack. I think I left my body. Another crack. I heard my own voice screaming, but I didn't feel it. I saw my fingers bending wrong, swelling. The bruising was immediate, purple lightning crawling under my skin. Dad leaned in and whispered, "Ask that again. I dare you." Then he dropped the hammer like it was nothing. I dropped to the floor. Cassidy finished her cornbread. No hospital, no apology, no punishment. That night, they locked me in the basement with an old ice pack and a wet rag. My fingers throbbed, mangled and crooked, wrapped in a dish towel that reeked of bleach. I spent the night shaking, whispering to myself to stay alive. Not out of fear, but out of fury. That was the night I changed. My fingers healed wrong. No doctor ever looked at them. They've never bent straight since. And Cassidy? She bragged about how tough love makes weak things stronger. But here's what they didn't know. Pain like that rewires you. It turns every scar into a blueprint. They thought I'd break and disappear. I didn't. Instead, I watched. I stayed silent. I let them forget me. And that was their first mistake. Because I started paying attention. Dad had a routine. He left the house every Sunday night at 6:30 sharp, said it was church board business, but never came back smelling like hymns. Mom had her own secrets, like sneaking into the school office after hours. She worked there part-time and rifling through donation funds. Cassidy was their darling, but she had more enemies than friends. She wasn't smart, just loud. Not talented, just privileged. And I was the invisible shadow. But shadows learn how light works. By the time I turned 16, I had read more than most adults ever will. I volunteered at the school theater to avoid home, learned stage lighting, set design, even how to run cables and speakers. I took notes about everything. And I started working at an animal shelter on Saturdays. That's where I met Donna. Donna was in her 60s, ran the shelter like a military base, but had eyes that knew too much. One afternoon, she saw my hand trembling as I picked up a dish bin. "What happened to your fingers?" she asked gently. I opened my mouth, closed it, then shrugged. "Family recipe," I muttered. She didn't push. But 2 weeks later, she handed me a folder. Inside, State documentation, emancipation paperwork, housing referrals, and 3 numbers to call if I ever needed a place to go. "You didn't ask," she said, "but I see everything." I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I folded the papers, tucked them into my backpack. I wasn't ready yet, but soon I would be, because revenge wasn't a sudden explosion. It was slow, careful, silent, and it would come not with a scream, but with a smile. I stayed 2 more years in that house, even after the hammer, even after the splintered fingers, the locked basement, and the nights I slept with one eye open while Cassidy paraded around like a pageant queen. Because I was planning. Every second, every step. It started quietly. Donna got me a spot volunteering at the local radio station. "She's good with wires," she told the manager, and just like that, I was behind the board on weekends, adjusting faders, testing mics, learning how sound worked, how voices could be amplified, how silence could be recorded. I didn't just learn how to mix. I learned how to listen. My dad's lies were always the same. Church board, late meetings, work calls. But I knew where he actually went. The truck yard on Old Marlin Road. I once followed him on foot for over an hour just to confirm it. There, he met with men in expensive boots, talked in hushed tones, and loaded boxes into the back of unmarked vans. But I wasn't interested in his deals. I was interested in what he feared. And that turned out to be reputation. He was running for deacon at his church, all smiles and fake prayers, shaking hands like he hadn't used them to destroy mine. Cassidy was filming cutesy TikToks about family values and dinner nights with Daddy. And my mom? She was now PTA president and stealing funds from field trip envelopes. They were building a legacy of lies. And I would burn it with something better than fire. Truth. One night, while they were at one of their family dinners at Applebee's, which never included me, I set up a cheap audio surveillance device in the living room, a recycled mic pack from the radio station, hidden under the old recliner. It ran on a timer and uploaded automatically to an encrypted drive. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. For weeks, I gathered audio. Cassidy mocking classmates. Mom saying, "We'll just skim the bake sale money again, no one ever checks." Dad laughing about scaring someone at work so bad they peed themselves. And then the moment I waited for, Dad saying, "That girl Lydia, she's nothing, barely human. I should have broken her jaw when she started talking back." He was drunk, slurred, proud. I clipped the file, made a copy, and then I waited. Graduation came. Cassidy got a new car. I got nothing, not even a handshake. But I didn't care. Because I was almost free. That night, I packed my things, taped a note to the fridge. "You broke me. But not forever. Keep the toast. I've got a bigger table now. Lydia." I walked out at midnight, the house asleep, carrying only a backpack and a thumb drive. Donna met me at the shelter. She'd already set up a cot in a small job cleaning kennels. I felt lighter that night than I ever had. But I wasn't done. The thumb drive? It didn't go to the cops. It went to the school board, the church elders, and the PTA. 3 envelopes. 3 sets of carefully timed detonations. One contained Cassidy's full TikTok video archive, including her faking charity work for views. One included recordings of my mother joking about misusing field trip money for personal treats and mocking poor kids with lunch debt. And the final envelope, the crown jewel, had my father's confession. "That girl Lydia, she's nothing, barely human. I should have broken her jaw when she started talking back." The same day those letters hit desks, I uploaded a podcast. Just 1 episode. Just my voice. Titled, "The Leftover Daughter." I told the truth, every inch of it. No names, no slander. Just my story, wrapped in calm narration, scored gently with background music from the radio station. It wasn't rage, it was peace. By sunset, the episode had 2,000 downloads. Then 10,000. Then it went viral on TikTok, thanks to someone who clipped the line. "When you break a child's fingers, you teach her how to type her own truth." That line became a trend. Within a week, my family was on fire, not literally, but socially. Cassidy's sponsors dropped her. Mom was asked to step down from the PTA. And Dad? The church voted to remove him from the board. He didn't know where it came from. He blamed internet haters. He had no idea it was me, because I never used my full name. I didn't need to. The truth carried its own thunder. And I wasn't finished yet, because one thing still remained. The house. The one I'd grown up in, where I was locked in the basement, where my bones were fractured, where silence was currency and pain was furniture. I had one last thing to do. It was a Tuesday when I saw the listing go up. 4-bedroom fixer-upper. Owner looking for immediate offload. Offers welcome. Address? My old house. Turns out, after Dad lost his church title and Cassidy's influencer revenue dried up, things got tight. They stopped paying the mortgage, then came the letters, then the auction notice. I watched it all happen. Silently. The house I grew up in, the one where I scrubbed blood from the floor with my left hand while the right was still broken, was now $18,000 behind on payments and begging for a buyer. So I called in a favor. Donna's cousin worked at a nonprofit that helps transition youth buy their first homes through a grant matching program. They were looking for someone reliable, someone with a clear goal, someone who had been through fire and knew how to build from ashes. I sent them my podcast episode, just that. They approved me in less than 48 hours. A week later, I walked up to that rotting front porch, clipboard in hand, new hoodie zipped tight, and signed the purchase agreement. They didn't even know it was me. Until I moved in. I waited until closing day. The front lawn was still scattered with boxes, Cassidy crying on the phone, Dad screaming at someone about how this is all fake and we're being targeted. I walked right past them with a key in hand. Cassidy froze. What? What are you doing here? Dad looked up, eyes bloodshot, mouth open. I turned to them both and smiled a calm, dangerous smile. I told you I'd get a bigger table. Then I stepped inside. The silence was delicious. They stood there, stunned, as the door closed. That night, I didn't dance or scream or blast music. I unpacked one thing only, a brand new dining table. Real wood, paid for by my own money. And on it, I placed 3 things. A recording device, my broken hand x-ray from 2 years ago, and a nameplate that read, Lydia Holloway survivor, not servant. I didn't need to destroy them publicly. They were already eating themselves alive. But I made sure one last message landed. 3 days after I moved in, I hosted my first dinner. Not family, friends, real ones. Other girls from the shelter, from the radio station, even Donna. And on each plate, a single seared steak. Cassidy used to say I didn't deserve steak. Dad used to eat mine and call it father's tax. But that night I fed everyone the meal I was never allowed. When I passed the final plate to Donna, she looked at me and asked, "What made you come back here?" I just smiled. "This place used to be a prison," I said, "but I turned the locks around." As laughter filled the kitchen, I stepped into the hallway and stared at my reflection in the same cracked mirror where my father once called me useless. My fingers still didn't bend right. One knuckle sat a little too high, but they worked. They built this life. They typed my truth. And when I reached up and traced that scar across my hand, I didn't feel rage. I felt power, because they thought they broke me. But all they did was give me something to rebuild from. And when someone rebuilds from rubble, they don't come back seeking revenge. They come back owning everything that tried to bury them, including the front door.